We know from the news, if you've been paying attention, that the Catholic Church in India is in absolute turmoil, that there have been cases of two factions in the church there, one battling it out over how the Syro-Malabar rite, that would be the local Eastern, quote unquote, rite of the liturgy, should be offered. In the aftermath of Vatican II, the Vatican II document said that the Eastern Rite liturgies should be, that the traditions should be preserved and not have any what we would call Latin accretiations added to them, meaning no influence from the Roman West. That the integrity of the Syro-Malabar Rite or the liturgy of St. John Chrysostom or the liturgy of St. Charbel, depending where you are, they should all be kept with their integrity. They should be preserved. And it goes into all the good reasons for it. It's the best document probably from Vatican II. Nobody ever complains about the document on the Eastern churches. But despite that, many Eastern liturgies are having the influence of the Novus Ordo Mass added to them, often in the vernacular, often facing the people, all sorts of things that violate the letter of the law of Vatican II's documents on the Eastern churches. And it's to give you an idea of how blatant this is, the conflicts got to the point where Pope Francis intervened last year with having the papal nuncio deliver a message to the church in India, telling them to actually offer the traditional Syro-Malabar rite, the traditional liturgy of the Syro-Malabar rite of the church, as opposed to the more Novus Ordo influenced one. That might surprise you, except Pope Francis always said that he was implementing fully Vatican II, and the documents on the Eastern churches are unambiguous on this. So he told them to get with the council and do what they were told. The priests there said no. At least some of them did. The conflict got to the point where a mass would be scheduled, and two priests would come to that same mass, one representing each faction, with laity representing each faction, and the priests would be trying to push each other off the altar to offer the mass at the same time. Totally unbecoming. Total chaos. And this is in a backdrop where India is one of the countries where there's just open hostility to Catholics and to Christians more broadly. They say some pretty heinous things there. And it's actually against the law in India for people to try to bring people to Christ through conversion. When we think about the persecution of the church in the West, it tends to be a little more subtle. Government snoops in our pews, people listening on reading emails surreptitiously, trying to dupe you online to doing things you shouldn't be doing, using your words you say online against you, that kind of stuff. In India, it's a little different. And so here, pray for the church in India as we go here to Info Vaticana with the headline, India, politician from Modi's party offers money to beat and end Catholic priests. This is a politician offering a bounty on priests. I've been accused of having a persecution complex. The church is being persecuted. Jesus told us it would be. But it's not an open in the streets thing in the West. Not yet. This is a little different in India. So pray for Catholics in India. At first, the church there put aside this stupid battle they've got going on there, and that they actually adhere to the church's teaching on the liturgy and things. Again, best document from Vatican II unequivocally is the document on the Eastern churches. Never heard anybody complain about it. And they were told to preserve what was handed to them, which is the Catholic answer to times of change, is to preserve the faith in its entirety. And for whatever reason, some factions are not wanting to. It would be good for them to lay aside this dispute in the face of this stuff. So we go here to the article, quote, in a new episode that reflects the growing environment of hostility towards Christians in India, Gopichan Paldekar, a member of the Maharashtra Legislative Assembly and representative of the BJP, the same political party as the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, has offered financial reward for acts of evil against Catholic clergy. According to a report by Catholic Arena on X, Paldekar has promised 350,000 rupees, or about 3,800 euros, about $3,500 to $3,800 to anyone who physically harms a priest, and 1 million rupees, about 10,800 euros, or about the same in dollars, to anyone who forcibly ends him. So YouTube, got to be careful how you talk about this. These words, which in themselves constitute a direct call to hatred and crime, add to a long list of public statements in which the politician ridicules the foundations of the Christian faith. The politician doesn't limit himself to inciting violence. He has also resorted to a long-standing propaganda tactic in India, accusing the church of carrying out, quote, forced conversions. At a rally in Kapwad Sangli, he even linked the self-removal of a woman in Jalna to the alleged activities of Christian mercenaries, meaning he's accusing Christian mercenaries of driving this woman to committing a sin that cries out to heaven for justice, to removing herself. We're talking about an evil man here. These accusations are as serious as they are unfounded. In a country where religious freedom is recognized in the Constitution, the Catholic Church does not force anyone to be baptized. Those who convert do so after a process of formation and discernment that can last years, motivated by their personal encounter with Christ and not by external coercion. However, certain radical Protestant groups and Hindu nationalist sectors repeat these accusations to justify persecution and discriminatory laws. Yes, in India, there are Protestant groups who would rather someone remain in pagan darkness than become Catholic. Try to wrap your head around that one. Take all the time you need. But it gets worse. In one of his most blasphemous comments, the politician publicly challenged Jesus Christ. I'm saying the following words to quote the politician directly. Quote, "If Jesus can really perform miracles, then I'll listen to him. But he doesn't do anything, so why all these protests?" Oh no, got him. How will the faith ever recover from such a low IQ take like this? Pray for this priest, or pray for this secularist here. This kind of challenge is not just a provocation, but a deliberate attempt to ridicule the faith in order to publicly humiliate its believers. Anyone who measures God's truth by political criteria or by retaining public office does not understand the gospel. Christ did not come to dethrone legislators, but to save souls. And you get a lukewarm response from both government and the church in India to this. Probably from the church, because the church is too busy having an internal battle over whether or not they should listen to the Vatican on keeping their traditional liturgy or not, to the point where they make the disputes between traditionalists and everyone else on terms of liturgy in the West to look peaceful and like a mild disagreement compared to what's going on in India. Because again, these are people priests pushing each other off altars in the middle of Mass. Okay, from different factions. It's just wild stuff. Battles in the streets over the liturgy. Stuff that we can't wrap our heads around here. All while politicians are calling for the heads of priests, basically. Now, Gloria TV does give us a little bit more on this story. Headline, Indian politician has offered a bounty for attacking priests and nuns. The Info Vaticana article left out the nuns part. This always gets my hackles raised. Religious, men and women religious, I've always been biased in their favor, always. And so stories like this, when you get a villain like this calling for heinous acts of evil to be done against people who've given their lives totally to the church, unbelievable. He allegedly told supporters we should keep prizes for those who bash up missionaries coming to convert people. The Catholic Bishops' Conference of India denounced the remarks as a clear incitement to religiously motivated violence and emphasized they violate India's penal code. The National Commission for Minorities has sought an investigation which the Maharashtra government is required to submit by August 17th. That's just a few days from now. The comments come against a backdrop of rising violence against India's Christian minority coming from the elephant worshippers there. And from 2014 to 2025, violent attacks against Christians and Christian churches in India have risen 555%, according to the United Christian Forum. 834 such attacks were recorded in 2024 and 378 for the first half of 2025. In March 2025, 20 tribal Christians from Sukma district and that town filed a petition detailing systematic violence and intimidation, but the High Court ultimately dismissed their case. So you see, it is institutionalized there. The system will not defend Christians there. Full stop. He goes, yes, the persecution of the church is very real. It takes different forms in different places. but the system is against Christians. And that's why that politician feels free to speak publicly. That's why it's funny that the bishop said, oh, well, it's a violation of the penal code. That's great. No one's going to care. The courts already have dismissed actual violence and accusations of it made by Christians against others. And they just dismissed it because it's Christians who are the target. It's India. They have a deep-seated animosity towards the Catholic faith. And what's real wild about this is, according to the church, Saint Thomas, doubting Thomas, went to India to spread the gospel. Later centuries, missionaries would arrive in India, and they would report stories from people, from locals who had crosses up as symbols of a faith, and they described an encounter with a man who told them about Jesus, who, when they described the man and everything, the stories he told, they realized that guy sounded suspiciously like doubting Thomas. That's what the Apostle Thomas did. India has had a Christian presence basically since the beginning. And the system wants to make sure that that presence is just a minority in the corner with no prospects for actually influencing the country and actually bringing the entire country to the church. They'd find it a threat. And you add to that, of course, the lingering animosity towards British colonial rule in that country, and you get a perfect storm for a place where the Catholic Church will be prosecuted. And they get the help from Protestants. So pray for the church leadership there, pray for the conversion of souls in that country, and pray that our brothers and sisters in the faith will remain safe. I'm curious what you think about this, though, so let me know in the comments, please. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It absolutely does help. Sharing this on social media helps a lot, too. And as always, pray for the church. Again, pray for the leadership in that country. They desperately need it. And the church leadership who needs to find a more forceful way to respond that is in conformity with our values as Catholics. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.